Fascial chains are the topic I'd like to discuss today. I'll start with a story that's probably familiar to many of you. Imagine someone has neck pain. It's not unbearable, but it's a constant ache and aching, and by evening it feels heavy, sometimes shooting when turning your head. The person does everything that common sense suggests, stretches his neck, turns his head back and forth. He goes to a massage therapist, and the therapist, honestly and conscientiously, spends 20 minutes guiding him to the oral area. And you know what? It feels better for a couple of hours. And then it all comes back. So, week after week, month after month. Man. He's already starting to think that this is forever, that it's age, that it's Hondros Island, that this pillow is wrong. But the problem, it turns out, is not in the neck at all. The problem is in the thigh, in the shin, in the place that he would never have thought about in his life, having lost his new scruff. Sounds a bit esoteric, doesn't it? As if I were about to start talking about energy flows and chakras. But no, this is pure, fully convincing evidence, and today I want to explain it to you, piece by piece. It is generally possible for the calf muscle to be tight and the pain to radiate to the neck. How 2 points on the body, almost 1.5 meters apart, becomes so connected that the tension in one pulls the other along with it. The main thing is what to do with this in practice, how to look for the real root of the problem and not chase a symptom all your life. To understand all this mechanics, we need to get to know one hero who is almost never talked about in school. This hero is called fascia, and this is where things get interesting, because fascia is perhaps the most underrated tissue in our body. For many years, literally centuries, anatomists treated her like trash. Do you know what that looked like? When a doctor or student dissected a body to study muscles, bones, blood vessels, nerves, everything considered important, he first had to get to these structures. On top of all this, enveloping every muscle, lay a whitish, translucent, slightly sticky film. And it was simply scraped off with a scalpel, seized and thrown into a basin so as not to interfere with viewing the real thing. Tomea. It was called packing material, a packaging material, literally like the bubble wrap in which a parcel was wrapped. It's not useful in and of itself. Its job is simply to hold things in place. And only in recent decades, very recently by historical standards, has it begun to dawn on us. What we've been throwing into the pelvis, one of the body's most important systems, all this time, is that fascia isn't a package at all, but a coherent, living network permeated with nerve endings that literally keeps us in shape. Let's figure out what it is. Fascia is a connective tissue made up of collagen and elastin, the same proteins that make up our tendons and ligaments. If you're just being realistic, imagine a dense web, a network of the most elastic fibers, a submerged, sting-like environment. This network envelops everything, every muscle like a sheath, each muscle bundle within this muscle also in its own sheath. Each individual muscle fiber is wrapped again. It's like a matryoshka doll, a shell, inside a shell, inside a shell. And this is only inside one muscle. And then the fascia wraps around the bones, envelops the internal organs, the heart, lungs, and intestines, forming a kind of pockets and suspensions on which the organs are held and prevented from collapsing when we stand. It runs right under the skin, in a single layer throughout the entire body. And here's the key idea, the reason we're here today. Keep it in mind throughout this conversation. Fascia in the body is not a collection of separate pieces. It is a single sheet, one continuous tissue, from head to toe. If we could magically dissolve everything else, all the muscles, all the bones, all the blood, all the organs, and leave only the fascia, we would be left with a ghostly, translucent person, completely recognizable, with all the fingers, the facial features, the folds of the body. Because the fascia follows the shape of the body down to the smallest detail, since it is what defines and maintains this shape. Think about this carefully. The tissue in your foot is physically, materially connected to the tissue in your neck, not through a nerve signal, not through some kind of transmission of information through wires, but literally, mechanically. It's the same canvas, just stretched across different parts of the body. Pull one edge, roads the entire canvas. To really get a feel for this, I like to use a very simple and very clear analogy. Take a sweater, a regular knitted sweater, preferably a thick one. Wear it for a day. Now grab the bottom edge somewhere near your thigh and pull it down. What will you feel? Tension will go away. Up. You'll feel the fabric stretch on your shoulder like something tugging at your wrists, like a warehouse, a colleague, and a slash across your back. You tug at your hips and it resonates on your shoulder and ours. Fabric. It's one thing. The tension spreads along it. It has nowhere to go. It runs along the fibers to where the fabric can give in. There. Fascia in our body works exactly the same way. It's like that tight sweater, only it's on the inside, not the outside, and it's ingrained into every muscle. And when constant tension forms somewhere, for example in the shin, a tight knot or congestion forms. It's as if someone grabbed our inner sweater from below and pulled, and the tension, according to the laws of physics, would run upward, a polyline. But this raises a fair question. A sweater stretches in all directions at once, but for some reason, the tension in the body follows very specific paths. Caveat. It's felt specifically in the neck, not, say, the right ear or the left cervix. Why is that? Why are there specific pathways along which tension travels? 1. Here's a man whose name you should remember if you're interested in anything body-related. Thomas Myers, an American structural integration specialist. In 2001, he published a book called Anatomical Trains, Anatomy Trans. It was, without exaggeration, a revolution in our understanding of how movement and tension in the body work. Myers did something ingeniously simple. He said, look, if the fascia is a single sheet, but at the same time the muscles are connected to each other through it in a certain order, then this means that there are non-living lines of tension, paths in the body. He called them myofascial medians or anatomical trains. 1. This train metaphor is incredibly accurate. Let's dwell on it. Imagine a railroad. The train has tracks. These are the immovable lines of fascia that run throughout the body. And there are stations. These are places where the line is attached to the bone, where it makes a kind of stop before moving on. And there's a train car, and those traveling between stations. These are specific muscles. One muscle reaches a bone, attaches to it, and from that same bone, literally continuing the line, the next one begins. A muscle, and it moves on. Muscle, bone, muscle, bone. Car, station, car, station. And all of this is connected by a single fascial nothingness that runs through the entire chain. The train travels from one end of the body to the other, without stopping once. Myers described several such main lines, such trains. There is a spiral line that goes around the body diagonally, like a serpentine ribbon. There are lateral lines running along the sides of the body. There is a deep front line hidden in the very heart of the body. There are lines of the arms. But today, we're interested in the main star of our story. The very train that directly connects the crucible and the crucible. It's called the superficial backline, the superficial or the backline. Remember her, it is she who is to blame for the story with which we began. Let me take you along this line, this train, station after station, from bottom to top. Get ready for a fascinating journey along the entire back of your body. Let's go. The first station, the starting point of our train, is under the foot. Just beneath the arch of the foot, under the toes, is a dense fascial structure called the plantar fascia or plantar opinibros. This is such a tight, springy plate, stretched like a tetalook along the entire sole. Exactly. Incidentally, it becomes inflamed with a condition known to many runners and people with standing jobs. Plantar fasciitis, which makes stepping on your heel in the morning feel like causing a flare-up. So, our train starts here, under your foot. Then comes the line. It encases the heel, and this is a crucial point. It continues continuously into the thick, powerful Achilles tendon. The very one that each of us has grabbed at least once when our foot cramped or when stretching before a run. the Achilles. Manda, this is essentially a continuation of the same track that was under the foot. The train moves further, upward, and the line of the sickly tendon flows into the iconoclastic muscle, into that very calf, into the shin. And there she is, our heroine, the clogged, pinched, constricted calf where it all begins. The iconoclastic. Muscle is a big, strong car on our train. Let's move on. The train stops at the knee, stopping below the knee, and continues up the back of the thigh. Here, we have a group of muscles called the hamstrings, or more commonly known as the hamstrings. These are powerful muscles that run along the entire back of the thigh. Another big train? Let's go higher. Hamstrings. They attach to the pelvis, to the so-called ischial tuberosities. These are the very bones on which, we sit. Feel them. When you sit on a hard chair, you see two protruding points under your buttocks. That's it. A large station. And from this station, the belt manifests further, along the sacrum, along the pelvic bones, and flows into what is probably the most important and extended part of our root. This. The muscles along the spine, the back extensors. Scientifically, they're called the erector spinae muscle. These are long, strands that run in two rolls along the spine, from the bottom to the top, from the sacrum to the skull. Feel them. On your lower back, on either side of your spine. These two dense muscle ropes are the back extensors, ours. The train travels along them for a long time, across the entire back, through the lumbar region, through the pelvic region, rising higher and higher up to the neck. And here is the final stretch of the journey, the extensors. The back and this entire back line reaches the back of the head to the base of the skull, and there they attach to the occipital bone. Moreover, this area contains a special, short, but extremely important group of muscles at the very base of the skull. Beneath the occipital muscles are literally a few centimeters of tissue between the skull and the first cervical vertebrae. The muscles are tiny, but they are packed with nerve endings and play a vital role in head position and neck tension. And interestingly, our train doesn't end at the occipital bone. There's a thin fascial layer that extends right across the cranial vault. This plate is called the cranial opanivos, or galea, and it extends all the way to the nabovnia duci dobrovaya. That's it. There are, so to speak, a superficial backline that runs from the toes of the feet and bends the entire body back as a single continuous thread. Let's go. Now let's stop for a second and take a look at the entire route, our entire train. The sole of the foot, the Achilles tendon, the calf, the hamstrings, the hips, the back extensors, and along the entire spine, the back of the head, the neck, the cranial vault, the eyebrows. 1. A line, one continuous strand of fascia with muscles strung on it. Now, return to our sweater analogy. If, at the bottom of this line, in the area of the roof, a tight, clogged, crusty area has formed, what will happen, right? It will pull the entire line down with it. Like a knot on a rope, it pulls the rope from both sides. The tension will run up the root and sooner or later will rest there. In the valley, it is attached to the most mobile, the most sensitive part, to the neck and the back of my head. And then, at the very end of the train, in the detonation, the occipital muscles try to hold my head steady against the tension pulling them from below. And that's where that aching, nagging, debilitating pain appears. You see? Now what's the trick? The calf is the cause, the one doing the pulling, and the neck is the effect, the one being pulled, and the one who ultimately suffers and screams in pain. Us. All our lives, we run to the one who screams at our neck and console it. And that one, those who silently pull, the caviar remains in the shadows, unnoticed by anyone. Therefore, and the relief is temporary. They squeeze the neck, relaxed it a little for a couple of hours, but the tension from below continues to work and everything returns to normal. That's not it. Someone would definitely be interested and give a good response. Listen, okay? The fascia is a single unit, like a train. But can tension really be transmitted over such distances through living tissue? Maybe these are all beautiful metaphors, but in reality, the chain breaks at the very first joint? Fair skepticism, and so on. There is an answer because it was tested not in words, but in the laboratory on real drugs. They conducted experiments, took a fragment of the body with protected fascial connections, and pulled one end of the line. And at the other end, they measured whether the tension reached it, and it did. It did. Not 100%, of course. Some of the force is absorbed along the way, dissipated. But a noticeable, measurable portion of the force is transmitted through the fascial connections from one area to the next and beyond. That's it. There's a mechanical connection between the chain links. It's not a matter of movement. It's a physically measurable fact. Pull the hamstring, and the hamstrings tremble. There are studies showing that the tension of the subluxated fascia influences the mobility of an entirely different part. So, no, the train really does exist. The tension travels and the chain circles as one whole. Yes, there is. By the way, there's a very simple experiment you can do right now, sitting still, to feel this line on yourself. It literally takes a minute. Stand straight with your feet together and lean forward, trying to touch the floor with your toes. Don't strain, don't spring, just bend calmly and remember where you can reach, the middle of your shins, your tickles, the floor with your palms. Remember this point, great. Now, here's what you do. Take a tennis ball or a massage ball or just a small firm ball. Roll it around 1 foot for 2 to 3 minutes. Step on it. Roll the ball with your sole, from heel to toes and back, pressing and kneading the entire plantar fascia, the very first station of our train. That's all. Don't touch one leg, the other. This is important for the purity of the experiment. And now, lean forward again, and this is where people usually get a little shock. The side of the body where you stretch the foot bends noticeably lower, sometimes just a few centimeters. One leg stretches more freely, lower, and more easily, while the other remains as before. You've only warmed up the sole of your foot, the very bottom of your foot, but your flexibility has improved all the way down to your lower back and beyond. Literally loosen the tension at the bottom of the sweater, and the whole sweater began to fit looser. This is the fascial cycle of action, which you can experience on your own body in just a couple of minutes. Definitely try it. It will revolutionize your understanding of how the body works. Okay, you say, the mechanism is clear, the train is moving, everything is logical. But how then can you treat it if your neck hurts and the root is exposed? How can you even figure out where to look, after all? A patient comes in complaining of a sore neck, pointing a finger at it. And here I want you to grasp perhaps the most practical point today. What's going on in his conversation? Where it hurts isn't always the problem. Remember this, you can tattoo it on the wall if you want. Pain is very egregious and very loud. Where the tension hits a dead end, where the tissue is overstretched, where the nerve is irritated. There it is loud and painful. And there, where the root cause resides, where that clogged knot that has caused all this to be strained, there's often silence. It might ache slightly, it might feel, well, a little tight, or it might be completely silent. The body is a master of compensation. It's brilliant at hiding the root of a problem and exposing its consequences. You know that. Like with the wiring in the house, the outlet sparks and shorts out in the bedroom. You panic, so you call an electrician, specifically for that outlet. An electrician, a good electrician, doesn't rush to change the outlet. He goes to look at the distribution board, and it often turns out that the problem isn't the outlet at all, but rather a problem somewhere along the line in another room. And the bedroom is simply where all this eventually came out and sparked. Bad. The repairman will replace the outlet, and in a week you'll call him again. A good one will find the real fault with the power line, ours. Bodies are exactly the same electrical network, only instead of wires, we have fascial lines. And more than that, it's a sparking socket. And ours. The challenge is to become a good electrician and find the panel. Walk the entire line and find the real node. How? Is this done in practice? The logic is simple. if there's pain in a specific spot, but there's no obvious cause right there, injury, bruises, inflammation, then it's worth walking along the entire fascial line that corresponds to that spot and looking for any areas that are tense, tight, or painful when pressed. Sections along its entire length, with more focus on the neck, and we now know that the neck sits on the superficial backline. We move down this train and check station after station. How are the back extensors along the spine? Are there any tight ridges at painful points? How? Need some clarification? How are the buttocks and ischial tuberosities? How are the hamstrings? Are they as stiff as wood? And of course, how about the calves? How about the Achilles? How about the sole? And very often, much more often than you might think, somewhere below this line, a vital, clogged, truncated area that the person didn't even know about is being renewed. Especially for those who sit a lot. Look at what happens to modern man who spends 80 hours a day in a chair. When we sit with our knees bent and the fascia and hamstrings are in a shortened, relaxed position for hours, day after day, year after year. And the fascia, it is a smart, adaptive fabric. It gradually remembers this truncated position as if freezes in it, loses length and elasticity. The fabric literally adapts to the shape we hold it in for most of our lives. And so we develop a chronically shortened back line. And the shortened lower line constantly pulls on everything above, including the neck and the person. He sincerely doesn't understand why his office worker, who doesn't really do any work, always has a sore and aching neck. And that's why. That she hangs all day on a taut, groaning train that holds the packed game seats and hamstrings from below. Now, let's move on to the most practical tool that allows you to do this at home without a massage therapist. I'm talking about a massage roller. That same thick foam cylinder, the foam roller, that you've probably seen in gyms and online. It's also called a foam roller, a real thing. Inexpensive, readily available, and, when used correctly, incredibly effective, specifically for working with social circuits. How does it work, and why does it help? When you essentially do several things at once. Firstly, you mechanically press and knead the clogged, glued areas of the fabric. The point is, with prolonged immobility or overload, the layers of fascia can stick together, losing their ability to slide easily over relatively long periods. Imagine two sheets of film that have slightly stuck together. Rolling helps to separate these layers again and restore their sliding properties. Secondly, you increase blood flow in the area. The tissue warms up, coffee flows to it, bringing nourishment and removing waste products. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, you stimulate the very nerve endings of the fascia, sending a signal to the nervous system that it's time to relax, and the muscle fascial tone in that area decreases. Tissue, roughly speaking, it receives the command to let go and stops holding on to this excess tension. But here's another thing. The critical point we've been focusing on throughout today's conversation is that you need to roll with a bag. And the main principle is this: you need to roll not where it hurts, but where the cause lies. Remember our sparking socket and panel? Well, it's exactly the same story with the roller. A huge one. A colossal mistake that almost everyone makes is to vigorously roll the exact spot that hurts. Come on, let's look at the most illustrative example, exactly our case. My neck hurts. What does an inexperienced person do with a roller? They try to roll out their neck and upper back. That's it. Firstly, it's ineffective because we've already established that the neck is a consequence. There, tension simply comes out, rather than being generated, and that's it. Secondly, and this is serious, you shouldn't roll the neck aggressively at all. Important blood vessels pass through there, delicate structures are there, and the first cervical vertebrae are there. This is an area of extreme caution, and hitting it with a heavy roller is not only useless, but risky. So, that's it. The first rule is, don't torture your neck with a roll. And what about us? What do we do instead? We, like good electricians, head to the control panel and work our way down the train. And we begin methodically, station by station, working our way through the entire surface backbone, pinpointing the actual nodes within. Let me walk you through the specific technique, top to bottom, covering all the key points on this line. Let's start with the middle section, rolling the back extensors, the long muscles along the spine. Lie on the floor with your back on the roller, with the roller across your body, somewhere under your shoulder blades to start. Many people are bent over, feet on the floor, and their arms can be crossed over their arms or placed behind their head, supporting it. And pushing. With your legs, roll up and down the thoracic spine. Medina is the key word, and we'll come back to it. It's crucial. We use rolling techniques, rolling the muscles on the sides of the spine and the thoracic region. But we never try to push the lower back, much less the neck, with the roll. The muscles there don't protect the spine as much as in the thoracic region. We work the thoracic region and the muscles along the hepatic region, finding tight, painful areas and lingering there. We descend, below. The gluteal area and the place where the hamstrings are attached, those same saddle-shaped lumps. It's more comfortable to sit on the roller here. You can cross your legs to increase the pressure on one side and roll the gluteal muscles, finding tender spots. This is important. The station. Serious tension often lurks here, especially among those seated. Next, hamstrings. Sit on the floor, place the roller under your thighs, support yourself with your hands behind you, lift your hips, and roll your hips along the roller from your hips to your knees. Many people do this. It is here that a real treasure trove of people sitting is discovered for their beatings. The thighs from behind are hard as a board and painful. Don't be surprised if the katut roll is quite painful. This is one of the main suspects. And finally, we move on to our main heroine, the calf, the shin. This is what it all started for. Sit on the floor, with the roll under your calf and your other leg crossed over the top for added pressure. Use your arms to lift your hips so your weight goes into your shin, and slowly. Roll the escutcheon muscle from the Achilles tendon to the popliteal fossa. Here. In our history, neck pain is very often found, that very first source. A clogged, shortened, sensitive screen. And when you find a sore spot there, and you most likely will, don't skip it, dwell on it. We'll talk about this in more detail now. And don't forget about the very first station, about the foot, about that ball trick I told you about. Rolling the sole with a hard ball is also a full-fledged work on the lower part of the foot. And sometimes it's this that gives an amazing lift at the top. Now about that. The rolling technique itself, because it's also full of mistakes. First and foremost, slowly, very slowly. And mistake number 1 is to quickly move the parola back and forth, as if you were rolling out dough or rubbing wormwood. Rapid rolling is almost useless. You're simply pushing the fabric forward, not giving it time to react, relax, and release. That's right. Move very slowly. Literally centimeter by centimeter, allowing the tissue time to develop under pressure. Remember, we talked about the nerve ending and the command to relax. So, here it is. This command needs time to get there and work. Haste kills everything here. Secondly, when you find a painful hot spot, don't run away from it, but rather dwell on it. This again is counterintuitive. It's painful and you want to rush past it, but it's the right thing to do. The strategy is to find the knot and simply hold it, gently pushing under your body weight for about 30 seconds, sometimes up to a minute. And here's what happens if you breathe evenly and deeply while doing this. Try to relax. The pain in the spot will gradually begin to subside in waves. It felt like an 8 out of 10, for example, and after half a minute, it's down to a 4 out of 10. That's it. There's that moment when the fascia releases, when the knot unravels. That's the goal. Don't overdo it. Pain is just for show, waiting for the tissue to give in and relax under your calm, patient pressure. Third, pain, for example. There's a fine line here, and it's important to feel it. Rolling should be done. Being on the edge is pleasantly painful. You know that feeling when a massage therapist presses on a specific spot and it seems painful, but it's the right kind of delicious pain that makes you want to exhale. That's what we're aiming for. And here's what. It's absolutely forbidden to plunge into sharp, raw, angry pain, clench your teeth, and endure the unbearable. I think the more painful it is, the more effective it is. That's a grave mistake. From such a brew, when the muscles and fascia are compressed, they don't relax. Instead, they reflexively tighten even more, protecting themselves. The body reacts. A harsh pain, like a threat. And in response, he tenses up, and you get the opposite effect to what you wanted. So, that we work in a comfortable, tolerable range. Breathe, arrange ourselves, and not in any way. Don't give yourself an execution. And fourth, breathing. Never hold your breath on a painful spot. Instinct makes you hold your breath and hide when it hurts, but we need the exact opposite. Deep. Inhale, exhale slowly, and as you exhale, release into the relaxation point. Breathe here. Your main ally. It helps the nervous system switch to relaxation mode, and the tissue under the roll gives in much more readily. Let me do it now. I'll distill the entire practice into a clear algorithm so you have a clear plan of action in your head. So, you have pain somewhere. Let's say it's your neck. Step 1. Don't rush to treat the painful area. Instead, take a step back and ask yourself what facial line this area is on. The back of the neck is the superficial back line. Step 2. Go along this entire line from top to bottom and roll it with a roller, finding the real knots, those very painful congested points. Back extensors, glutes, hamstrings, pelvic floor muscles, feet. Step 3. Find the knot and linger there. Slowly and patiently, on the edge of pleasant pain, breathing evenly, waiting for the tension to release. Step 4. And very important, don't expect a miracle in one session. Fascia is a slow-moving tissue. It has been developing its shortened state for years, and it won't be possible to loosen it in a single session. Regularity is essential. Rolling a little bit every other day, for weeks and months. That's what really changes the situation. And finally, step 5, the strategic one. Eliminate the root cause not only with your roll, but also with your lifestyle. If the root cause is shortened calves and hamstrings from sitting, then in addition to rolling, you need to stand up more, walk, stretch, change your position, and straighten those stagnant legs. Otherwise, you'll get sick. Undo the knot in the evening and tighten it again throughout the day while sitting on a chair. This is a fair bet. Let's talk a little about the limitations of this method so as not to fall into the opposite extreme and turn fascial chains into a universal explanation for all ills. Roll and work. Chains are a wonderful tool, but they're not a cure-all or a replacement for a doctor. There are situations where neck pain isn't just a clogged calf, but a very specific medical problem. A herniated disc, a pinched nerve, inflammation, injury, and sometimes even more serious issues. There are red ones. There are warning signs that indicate you shouldn't lie down and instead see a specialist. If the pain is severe, a shooting pain radiating into the arm, accompanied by anemia, weakness in the arm, and dizziness. This pain may occur after an injury or persist and worsen despite treatment. In such cases, self-determination is inappropriate. The concept. Fascial chains brilliantly explains and helps with chronic, nagging, unexplained tension with no apparent cause. That's her territory. But she's not. It negates common sense and doesn't replace diagnostics when it's truly needed. A good approach is when we use understanding circuits as a powerful complementary tool, not as a pretext for raising alarming symptoms. Well, let's get to it. Let's take a moment to rise above the commonplace and the rooftops and look at Shiri's painting, because this principle is far more universal than a single story. Once you grasp the concept of fascial chains, you'll begin to see these connections everywhere, and so much in the body that previously seemed inexplicable will suddenly make sense. Why? A person with flat feet, with inward-sloping arches, eventually begins to experience knee pain, then hip pain, then, ascending pain, because of a disorder. At the very bottom of the support chain, it pulls and distorts everything above the lines. Why is it old? A palm injury that caused a person to limp and use one leg sparingly for 6 months could manifest itself more severely in the opposite shoulder a year later. Because of the body. To compensate for the lameness, I adjusted the tension along the spiral and lateral lines and the skew at the other end of the body. Why the stretch? Does tension in the back of your legs suddenly relieve a headache? It's because it's the same superficial back line that reaches all the way to your forehead. The body isn't a set. Individual parts that can be repaired individually, like the components of a car. The body is a single, integral, interconnected system of tensions. A single, unified whole. A place to call a friend, sometimes a very distant one. This is actually the main conclusion I've been leading you to throughout today's conversation. We're used to it. Think about your body in pieces. Your neck hurts, we treat your neck. Your knee hurts, we treat your knee. As if we were. Mechanics, like a car's body, can unscrew and replace a faulty part without looking at the others. But the body is designed fundamentally differently. Everything is connected into a single canvas stretched from head to toe and tension. It moves along it like a line across a stretched fabric. And that's why, very often, to get rid of pain in one place, you need the wisdom and patience to look for its root in a completely different place. So, on to the next one. When you or your loved ones have a sore neck and a neck massage only helps for a couple of hours, remember today. As for electricity, think of a train running from your eyebrows to your toes across the entire back of your body. Think of a sparking electrical outlet and distribution box. Look at the panel and ask yourself the right question, the one that distinguishes a good electrician from a bad one, and a wise attitude toward your body from the naive, and where the real cause lies. Look below. Like a row, to the hips, to the feet, go along the entire line, and it is very possible. You may find the key to your sore neck where you least expect it, in your own clogged and creaky body. Canvas. Learn to read it as a whole, not just in pieces, and it will respond with gratitude. That's all for today.